Sad Wings of Destiny is not only one of the most influential 1970s albums musically, but it also features one of the greatest album artworks ever made.
Great artwork here.
So, as a part of our Defenders of the Faith series, let's take a look at the history behind the Sad Wings of Destiny album artwork, discuss some of the hidden secrets on it, and then hopefully answer the question how this album artwork might have actually helped Judas Priest become one of the greatest heavy metal bands on earth. Here you go. Very quick, before we start guys, as always, please do not hesitate to comment on anything you hear or see in this video, and especially if you disagree with me, because the whole point of our Defenders of the Faith series is of course to start a conversation. But alright, let's do it! The task to create the artwork for Judas Priest's second studio album was trusted to the artist Patrick Woodroffe. But in reality, there were at least 3 people working on this project.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
The early Judas Priest manager Neil French, who in fact later on became a very successful advertising executive, despite working with the band for a rather brief period of time, had a good understanding on how to visualize and capitalize on the dramatic sound Judas Priest have developed on their sophomore record. And so when Neil pitched a couple of ideas to Gull Records' head, David Howells had immediately commissioned Patrick James Woodroffe to provide a painting which shall be used to represent Sad Wings of Destiny.
Mr. Woodroffe, Patrick Woodroffe.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
A fun fact, it was actually, at least partially, the pitch for the Judas Priest artwork which has eventually helped Neil French to break into the world of advertising after he parted ways with the boys. And this, of course, is no surprise, since, come on, this is literally the best possible ad for the band, isn't it? And so when Patrick presented his initial work for the band, the boys at Judas Priest absolutely loved it, and the only suggestion Rob Halford had back then was to add something around the angel's neck. And I'm quoting here, something like crucifix, but not really a crucifix. By the way guys, we actually did a rather extensive episode on this sign alone, its history and evolution throughout the years. So I'm not going to go into the details of the Judas Priest sign in this episode, but if you haven't seen it, as well as some other episodes on Sad Wings of Destiny, definitely check it out after watching this video. But even then, after the painting has been finalized, the task still remained to make it scream Judas Priest and make the band's identity match with the rest of the visual elements. And in order to do that, Judas Priest once again collaborated with the illustrator John Pasche, who of course was already well known to every Judas Priest fan for designing their artwork to their debut studio record, Rock and Roll. And it was in fact John who decided to update the band's logo and make it fit the overall mood of both the sound and the rest of the artwork, by taking the original logo KK Downing and Ian Hill came up with back in 1972 and giving it a much needed sinister look, thus blending this gothic mystique with the roughness of heavy metal. But anyways, thus the artwork was ready, and on their second studio album, Judas Priest were now all set to not only sound heavier, but also to complete the transition from their debut album with one of the strongest visual works of all time. The painting itself, which by the way was done in watercolors by Patrick, of course depicts an angel surrounded by flames and human bones.
Nothing new.
And most people at the first glance, including myself, and I actually have to be honest with you here that this first glance has lasted for me for many years, but would obviously assume that this is a fallen angel in hell. Yet upon a closer look, we may realize that it might not actually be so.
What?
You see, traditionally, fallen angels are depicted with black or burned wings, yet our protagonist has neither of those. In addition, he in no way looks embittered or disdainful like a fallen angel should, but rather sorrowful and grievous, as if he's mourning some lost soul he's looking down at. And if this is the case, then the concept of him being sad over somebody else's destiny actually fits much more with the title of this record.
Yes, that's true.
In addition, if we take a look at the lights and shadows falling on the angel, that it becomes clear that in addition to the flames, one source of light comes from the bottom, possibly a fire making the angel cover his face from it, yet the major one actually comes from directly above the angel. And thus the path back to the skies is actually clear for him, and therefore the protagonist is clearly not bound to this place. And even more, his wings are just fine, so I assume he can easily fly back to where he came from.
I'm leaving you.
But even more, if we take a closer look, we may actually realize that it might not even be hell he's in, but rather a site of some terrible tragedy or old war which has made the angel come down from the skies and mourn for the lost souls. You know, like a possible site of genocide. But most importantly, in his latest book, Biblical, Rob Halford has finally confirmed that the angel we see on Sad Wings of Destiny is essentially the same guy we will later on see on Painkiller and Angel of Retribution. And if we tie together the concepts of the 3 album artworks, we may actually speculate that possibly after seeing a genocidal site, an angel who was not able to help the poor souls rose back to the skies and got a little update to his armor just to be able to come as a savior from the outer skies in answer to the mankind's pleas in the future. But guys, just to be clear, I do actually understand that we're way overanalyzing this, and back in 1976, Judas Priest and the management most likely have simply gone for a cool painting which has suited their music. In 1976, before Sad Wings of Destiny has been released, Rob Halford really liked talking to the fans from the stage about how soon they will most likely burn all of the copies they own of Rock'n'Rolla, because they are about to hear a refined version of Judas Priest, much heavier and tighter than they were on their debut record.
In for a surprise, you're in for a shock.
And the fans of course did receive what they were promised. But in addition to the music, on the artwork on their second studio album, Judas Priest were actually able to capture the whole essence of the 1970s heavy metal, with all of its dark and gloomy glory, yet at the same time never seen before amount of energy produced by the bands on stage. And if we actually take a look at all of the rock releases from the same year, which by the way there are plenty of amazing ones, but it actually looks like back then most of the rock bands did not really care that much about the visual element of an album. And thus this gothic masterpiece really stood out from pretty much anything you could find at your local record store back then. And in addition to that, was able to perfectly capture all of the feelings Judas Priest evoked on Sad Wings of Destiny with their music, and possibly of the entire heavy metal of that decade, thus eventually helping Judas Priest to move to the top of the heavy metal mountain and lead the genre for many, many years. But anyways, what do you guys personally think about Sad Wings of Destiny, and most importantly, its cover artwork? Please let us know in the comments. And as I said before, there are a bunch of Sad Wings of Destiny episodes on the channel, including the one on the evolution of Victim of Changes, which I'll be very thankful if you check out right after this video. But most importantly, thank you so much for supporting me, this channel, and my country through this very, very difficult time. Just know that this community and your support means the world to me and all Ukrainian metalheads. We will prevail. Slava Ukraini!